Live from the 607 is the ODPH Entertainment Edition, where we're talking movies, comics, TV, and more. Why don't you join in the conversation? Hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome to another edition of the ODPH Entertainment Edition. I'm your host, Ken M., and sitting in studio this week, Padawan J could not make it in, but no, folks, we still have a panel here. Joining the panel for the first time, if you were down at New York Comic Con, you saw this man taking out everybody left and right on the Street Fighter II competition. He is a member of the ODPH Street Team. You'll be hearing him on the Wrestling Recap starting in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Breon.
Thanks, Ken, for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show. We have a lot to discuss. Let's waste no more time. Hashtag it up. Hashtag ODPHEE. If you want to join the conversation on social media, because, hey, we want to hear from you. So the biggest news story of the week had to be the debuting dominance, can I say that, of Aquaman.
Yeah, I did not expect that to be as big of a movie. It was.
No, definitely took number one at the box office. It was everything we were expecting and then some. A little more. We've been talking about the hype going into it, so we are going to be talking spoilers on the show. So if you're not ready for it, pause this episode after you download it and join in after you see the movie, because we're going to start talking about it in 3, 2, 1. Overall, Breon, what did you think of Aquaman?
I thought it was really good. It's kind of like most Marvel movies where it's just like, it's not like a amazing movie, but it's just pretty good. Like the second Thor movie, something similar to that. And like DC was kind of struggling to have movies be like that. Like a lot of them were just not very good, and they're trying to be like really serious and everything. Mm-hmm. But with Aquaman, they it's more like a Marvel movie where they have like comedy in it, and I think that helped it a lot to be more popular.
Oh, absolutely. The one thing I take away from this is when I saw this movie, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And for DC, this was a step in the right direction. This was what I wanted to see out of it. It wasn't a carbon copy of Batman vs. Superman and how dark and gritty that was. It wasn't like Justice League, which was kind of hit and miss in certain places. Mm-hmm. But the one great thing out of Justice League was Jason Momoa, who plays Arthur Curry in the film. And to get his own spinoff is truly saying something of how much faith DC and their film division has in the character of Aquaman. Because let's face it, as we've said before, Aquaman is not exactly a feared, defiant superhero. It's always kind of been like the fifth wheel of the Justice League. Yeah,
it's like, he can like control fish or something. Like, what is he going to do on land?
Yeah,
that type of stuff.
Exactly. But they established how much of a hero he was in this film, and just like a dominating force in his own right. And the movie was very vibrant. The one thing I will say is it was visually impressive. Just the special effects, especially when they went underwater to Atlantis.
Yeah, that was like really good special effects.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how detailed they were, from everything from the octopus playing drums, to build up for the fight scene, to just how intricate making Atlantis into a new age city, because it didn't have a feel like it was ancient or underdeveloped. It was state of the art. It had the Asgard feel to it. So I definitely agree with you. It felt like Thor. And for me, it felt like Thor Ragnarok. Because there was a lot of humor, but it wasn't forced. Like, the one thing I knock about Thor Ragnarok is I thought it was trying to be too funny.
Yeah, that is true.
And it was trying to be like Guardians of the Galaxy 2.5. Like, it was one of those areas where, like, okay, does Thor really crack this many jokes?
Yeah, it seems like they were just kind of trying to redo, or kind of like change the stuff that was in like the first two Thor movies and make it more of a comedy.
Yeah,
make it as serious.
Yeah, which I mean, it worked for Thor because Chris Hemsworth is hysterical. Like, his comedic timing is like vastly underrated. So for him in this direction that they went in for Thor, I thought worked. And obviously going into Aquaman, Jason Momoa pulled off the one-liners, the quick catchphrases of like a 1980s action hero. And especially like when he first meets Black Manta on the submarine to open the film. And you just kind of see when he shows up and he says like a really cool line and hits a guitar riff. And it was just kind of like, okay, I see where we're going with this. And it was just fun from out there to go from there. And definitely combined a lot of elements going on with it too. Which the one thing which I thought was going to be a drawback, but I don't think it was, is they didn't have too many villains in it. In the sense of they had Black Manta open up, and he did come back midway in the film. And if you saw the mid-post-credit scene, you obviously know the direction they're going to go for the sequel, because I guarantee you they're doing a sequel. Mm-hmm. But they kept the focus on Ocean Master, and they downplayed the trench, which I thought was good, because I thought by the way we were seeing the previews, the trench were going to play a bigger part of the film. And they really didn't, which I thought was good, because the one thing I was getting very fearful of was going to be like Spider-Man 3, where you just had so many villains, and it's like, what is going on? And you're building up the wrong one instead of the right one. Because I'm sorry, it should have been based around Venom and not Sandman for Spider-Man 3.
They were trying to do way too much in that movie.
Yeah, and I thought for Aquaman, especially, they needed to have a really good return to prominence, I guess, for DC films, because like we said, Batman vs. Superman did not like it at all. I thought they tried doing way too much and didn't pull off like a great story. And I thought with Aquaman, they wanted to establish that, hey, this character is actually, something you can respect and something that you can definitely build off of going into if you want to try doing another Justice League film. They definitely did enough to establish his character. And I thought Jason Momoa played him perfectly. And especially you see how he becomes a reluctant hero into the King of Atlantis by the time it's all said and done. Mm-hmm. I thought they did a really good job with it. I thought Amber Heard, who played Mera, she definitely stole the show on the scenes they were in together.
Yeah, she was really good.
Yeah, she definitely was. And especially going in, if you didn't really know a lot about the Aquaman mythos, I thought they did a really good job telling her story and showing how she was getting connected to Aquaman and where they were going in that direction. And I thought for going into the villains, though, I definitely thought Ocean Master was the right call to do. Patrick Wilson played him very perfectly. And you kind of had the sense of, okay, why he was, it was so important to really nail how Aquaman was a reluctant hero. That he wasn't somebody that just knew his own destiny and was trying to run from it. He was somebody that he obviously knew what was going on in Atlantis, had mixed feelings, but overall it grew as a hero in the story. And I think that was really imperative, and I thought Patrick Wilson played, his foil to a perfect letter, because he was somebody that definitely knew the history of Atlantis, and he wanted to become king of the oceans. And like I say, they define it as Ocean Master. And you understood his kind of, falling in love with power, so to speak, as he was trying to dominate everybody in under the water, and then take the war to the surface world. I thought he did a really good job doing that, because for Aquaman, like we say, his rogues gallery is not that of Batman or Spider-Man. You really don't know anybody after Black Manta for the most part. And I thought they did a really good job establishing, based off the comics a little bit too, the most recent runs of who Ocean Master was, and just why it was important to really nail this movie out of the park in total detail. And I don't think there was anything really, like a standout like moment that was really bad with the movie at all. I think it kind of just really flowed well. I mean, there were some silly parts I think you're going to have in any movie. I mean, obviously some of the, the chases and the fight scenes definitely had their moments.
Yeah, like the spinning of the camera.
Yeah, that one was a little out of control. But it was okay. But, it made sense to what you wanted to see. And then just overall how they set it up for the sequel, because I am fully convinced they're going to do a sequel off this. And I think for DC, this is such a big win that they can't let this momentum go away. They really
can't.
No, they really need to capitalize on it. Because as we saw, they're building up for Black Manta to take over for the sequel as the major villain. And you understand his motivations, which I thought they explained perfectly, to why he hates Aquaman. I mean, it made perfect sense. And now to see where he goes is going to be really interesting, and I think they can kind of delve into the character a little more, which I think as long as they keep it focused on Aquaman versus Black Manta for the sequel, I think the franchise is going to have a lot going on with this. But let me ask you, Breon, in looking at how Aquaman was set up, do you think they really did a lot more advancements compared to Justice League, or do you think that they kind of were in the same lane, so to speak?
I think it's more focused than Justice League was, where they were like, the comedy was just like wasn't really well timed or anything. But with Aquaman, it was a lot better. I mean, they're just trying to. I feel like they're just trying to make it more like a Marvel, like the Marvel movies are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I personally like with Batman v Superman. I kind of wish they went in that direction where it's like more serious, because it's like a contrast to like Marvel movies, most of them.
Right. Well, I think that the problem they had with Batman vs. Superman is they were trying to do too many stories at once. And like we said, we've been talking spoilers about this segment, so we're not going to really ruin anything here. But with Batman vs. Superman, they tried doing the Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller iconic story, and combined it with the death of Superman. You can't do both of them in the same movie.
Yeah, that's like 2 movies they could have made.
Yeah, it's just not going to work, no matter what you try doing, because both of those moments in comic history are standalones. You can't merge them unless you're doing like a quick recap for a timeline. And I thought the one thing that Aquaman really did was they kept everything based around Aquaman. They didn't really tie in a lot to the Justice League. If you notice, the only thing that they connected to the worlds of DC, they don't like it would, or this now the new catchphrase, worlds of DC instead of DC Extended Universe or Entertainment Universe. They only mentioned Steppenwolf once. And the only thing that you know about this movie really is it's based after the events of Justice League, which I thought was good because I didn't want to see like an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hey, did you know we were in the Avengers? Hey, you know about the event in New York? Hey. Because I thought if they really tried doing that, it was going to hurt them in the long run instead of help. But I thought they did a nice job of just placing a small Easter egg in there about saying, what the connection was with the Justice League. Because if they really were going to harp about connecting everybody in the DCEU / Worlds of DC, I mess that up all the time, so bear with me on that. I thought it would really have hurt the movie, but they made it standalone that if they don't go back to that formula of having a shared universe, it'll be okay. That you don't need to necessarily copy Marvel to the letter, because Marvel's plan since day one has been connect everything. DC hasn't. DC did the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy by itself. The original Man of Steel was supposed to be the kickoff of doing an extended universe, and you're just kind of combining parts as you were going now. To say it's a success is kind of a mixed bag. I think that's an honest statement. But I think the DC is definitely taking the steps in the right direction with this. That if they decide to go back and try doing another Justice League down the road, and obviously they're introducing new characters. We were going to have a Shazam movie coming out in April of 2019. We have to wait till June 5th, 2020 for Wonder Woman 1984. I know you're definitely disappointed about the wait for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Breon is a very big Wonder Woman fan. And just to see where they go with the films in between is going to be really interesting to see, because other than the Arrowverse, but is not connected to the worlds of DC, and the DC universe, that's weird saying, but I don't know exactly what planet that's supposed to be, because that's another shared universe, but that's not connected to any films. There really isn't a presence connecting everything together. So there's going to be a lot of room to grow and a room to build a story if they want to connect it, and if they don't have to. And I think that's true. I think that's going to help them out in the long term, because now you're not necessarily having to connect everything, because as we're seeing with Marvel now recently and everything going on with Netflix, and the shows are now in limbo. Can you connect the characters? Can you not? What's going to be the future? You don't really have that turmoil right now at DC. The only thing you can really celebrate is the success of a great movie that you can really build off of. But before we close out the segment, what is your final thoughts on Aquaman?
Yeah, definitely a step in the right direction. I hope with Shazam, it seems like it's going to be similar, like focused on comedy. So that should be good. And hopefully they can just, with Wonder Woman, and if they decide to do another Justice League, they can, keep going on the right track with their movies.
Absolutely. I think that this was definitely everything it needed to be. I mean, it mixed its blend of silliness and seriousness very well. And like I said, this is probably the closest comparison to Thor Ragnarok as we can make. Because, yeah, a lot of it was underwater instead of being on Asgard. But it had the same vein. You had the same kind of character who was reluctant, not really, a heroic character to start the film, but wound up becoming a hero by the time it was done. And obviously this has now set a change of course for the character and everybody surrounding him moving forward. That's going to be the really telling something to watch, because now the door is wide open for DC to go in a different direction if they want to or not. And it's going to be really fun to watch as fans. But let us know what you think. Hit us up on the hashtag ODPHEE. What was your thoughts on DC Films' Aquaman? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is George Gatton, and you are listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour Entertainment Edition.
Coming back for segment number 2 on this week's ODPH Entertainment Edition. Breon is in studio. We are going to be talking about another movie at the box office, and definitely one that, for us as comic fans, we were very excited to see this when we were at New York Comic Con this year. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, Breon, when you were down at NYCC, what was your kind of thoughts? What was the vibe that you were getting from other fans about this movie?
People seemed like they were really looking forward to it. I liked the art style for it. Like, they don't really, I haven't really seen a lot of movies that looked like that. So, definitely was looking forward to it.
Yeah, and especially for a Marvel film, because you don't really see this with Marvel's animation. Like, DC's animation, we all know what they're bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a movie that, when we first heard about it, I think the collective, with John Guy Signal, Brad Guy Signal, Padawan, myself, and you down in New York, when we were all hearing about this, we're like, okay, this is really sounding interesting and definitely looked very cool. But we were like, okay, what is Marvel going to do? Because we really haven't seen that much of animation. And then the word coming out of the panel from NYCC was, this movie is going to blow you away. And it definitely had that vibe when we saw the trailer. What was your reaction when you first saw the trailer?
It seemed similar to like Spider-Man Homecoming, where it was like, it was like a more like comedy movie. It definitely looked a lot better than like the Amazing Spider-Man movies and like Spider-Man 3. So it seemed like they were going on the right track with Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, definitely. I thought that when I saw the trailer too, I was sitting there going, okay, this is going to be based about Miles Morales, which is about time we saw him on the big screen too. He has been out for a very long time as Spider-Man. I know it's the Ultimate Universe, but he has definitely risen in his popularity amongst comic book fans, and it's long overdue he's finally in a film. The animated film definitely did justice to his character, and it definitely, the trailer showed you exactly what you were kind of getting, and obviously it kind of gave a little teaser to mainstream fans who might not know the whole thing about the Ultimates universe versus the Marvel 616 universe versus every other single Spider-Man that's mentioned in the history of time, because the one thing Marvel does right, well, one of the things they do right, I should say, is they have one universal timeline that is never, I want to say, questioned if it's the real one, if there's any issue with it. It's always the 616 universe. That is the Marvel universe that we all know. They have established that they do multiverses and alternate timelines, and they'll sometimes have different characters involved in there. i.e., Miles Morales is the Spider-Man in the Ultimates universe. There is no more Peter Parker. Peter Parker was killed off in that universe. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but that's been long in comic book history for a while now. So going in with this, the movie was expected to introduce Miles Morales. It introduced Spider-Gwen, a.k.a. Ghost Spider, as they're now using as their code name. And it also showed in the trailer you were seeing throwbacks to Peter Porker, the Amazing Spider-Ham, which is from the 1980s comic. Which, if you've never read that was more geared towards a younger audience. It's basically the Marvel Universe if they're all, cuddly animals, so to speak, and different characters and such. And they also showed throwbacks to different eras where we saw Spider-Man Noir, who was, the 1930s Spider-Man, and, the different time periods where Spider-Man has been in. This has been introduced in the comics, most recently as Spider-Geddon, and it's also been brought up many times throughout comics. So obviously going into the movie, they did a nice job establishing this is going to be based around Miles, and they definitely threw in enough humor that I don't want to say they went Deadpool on this, but they're definitely throwing enough, breaking the fourth wall when they were mentioning at one point Miles Morales is like, how many Spider-Men are you? And he's like, just wait till Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And then instantly you go, oh, okay. And
I know what that is.
Yeah, because if you've ever gone to Comic-Con, and Breon, you went for the first time last year to New York Comic Con. how many Spider-Men did you see walking around Comic-Con?
Yeah, there's a lot of like cosplaying
Yeah.
going on.
So obviously, if you knew that inside joke, you definitely understood it. And if you've never been to Comic-Con, what are you waiting for? You gotta get to a Comic-Con, wherever you can get to. But that is beside the point. But going into the movie, and I'm going to give this as spoiler-free as possible, because Breon has not seen it. We had a little scheduling conflict. He will be seeing it by the next time he's on the show. But going into this movie, the expectations were, what can Marvel bring to the table with animation? And to my pleasant surprise, this had to be one of the best films Marvel has done, and this had to be one of the best Spider-Man films of all time.
Oh, really?
I am going to go out on a limb and say that. They really captured the essence of what it is to be Spider-Man, both on Miles Morales' part and Peter Parker's, because they explain how this is loosely based in the Ultimates universe. It's never really said, but you get that idea and understanding. Have you seen some of the animation? They've shown it in the trailer. The Green Goblin is definitely more like the Ultimates version than Norman Osborn, as we saw in the trailer. And you kind of sense that, okay, something is going on, and the Spider-Men meet for the first time, Peter Parker and Miles Morales. They delve a little in the trailer about his origin, but they followed it very closely to the comics. And you get the sense of what's going on and how there is a catastrophic event that causes a lot of dominoes to fall, shall we say. And you're understanding as you're watching the film why everything is happening. But they're also tying it in with the animation style. That there's a lot of different styles going on with it, that it's not just a universal, okay, this is how the film is going to be from point A to point B. They're mixing a lot of different factors. One thing I liked is when they're introducing the Spider characters, they're showing like their first issues and who is the artists and writers who created them.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, which I thought was, at least I noticed that for Spider-Gwen, and I'm pretty sure they did that for Peter Parker. I know that they had one of the best Stan Lee cameos, rest in peace, in the film too, which was a nice touch because obviously Stan Lee and Steve Ditko created Spider-Man. And they definitely gave a shout-out to Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli. If you look at one cell phone picture in the movie, they didn't do the cover art. At least I can't remember if they did or didn't. But they still gave a shout-out to all the previous creators, which I thought was a kind of a nice touch because a lot of times you don't get that in the movies. But as the movie is going on, you're understanding what's happening and why you're seeing all these Spider-Men, Spider-Women show up. And they really did a nice job of just capturing the essence of why Spider-Man is arguably the greatest superhero of all time. Now, you can argue this because who would you say is your favorite superhero of all time?
I'd say probably Wonder Woman. Yeah.
Fair enough. And that's her name is definitely in the conversation. But for Spider-Man, like for me, it's just he's the everyman that is just trying to do good no matter what bad is happening around him, and is always just finding the way to win. With great power comes great responsibility. The catchphrase that has now become, an iconic statement whenever you're talking superheroes. And this movie really captured the feel of that. And the animation style. The only thing I will nitpick, though, about this movie, and I couldn't stand, is how they animated Kingpin. I absolutely couldn't stand it. They just made him, it almost seemed like he was a round 8-ball. And I did, like, for me, I'm just kind of sitting there going, this just doesn't look like him. Like, the animation was great otherwise. I gotta say that. And I mean, visually, like, when you see Miles Morales on the side of the building in the trailer, and just him doing the free fall. I mean, how great would you say that animation is?
Yeah, it's like almost like Pixar-esque.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. And just throughout the movie, they tie in just so many different elements, and the storyline is such a classic Spider-Man story. And obviously they set up enough for the sequel. They have a great bonus scene, too, which they tie into another alternate timeline Spider-Man. And I don't want to spoil that for anybody. But if you do your comic history, you can definitely figure out if I say 2099 who is involved. Overall, though, I have to say this had to be one of my favorite Spider-Man films of all time, without question. Like, what would you say is your favorite Spider-Man movie?
Mine is still Spider-Man 2.
With Dr. Octopus?
Yeah, I thought that one was really good. I like the Amazing Spider-Man movies also. I know, like, those ones aren't as like a lot of people don't really like those ones as much, but I thought that was those were good, and Homecoming was pretty good too.
Yeah, I have to agree, except I was one of those guys that does not like Amazing Spider-Man. I was not a fan of the Andrew Garfield run. Nothing against him. It's just there's just certain elements I was just like, I'm just not buying him as being Peter Parker. He was a great Spider-Man, don't get me wrong. But as far as Peter Parker goes, he was just too hip and too cool.
Oh,
in my opinion. But I'm a big fan of the original one with Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 I thought were great. I have nothing to say about Spider-Man 3 because that was just not my cup of java.
Yeah, mine neither.
Yeah, to say the least. But in Spider-Man Homecoming, I thought was a step back in the right direction. And for Marvel, with this movie, it was a step back in the right direction for their animation. Doing an animated film and proving it can be successful. I know they've already talked about doing a sequel, which I'm super excited about. And they've also talked about doing a spin-off movie centering around Ghost Spider and other Spider-Women throughout the multiverse, which I think is a great idea to do. And obviously going into this, would you say with the success of Into the Spider-Verse, what other characters from Marvel would you want to see in an animated movie?
I mean, X-Men, Iron Man, like any of the Marvel superheroes would be pretty good.
Do you think they should try going the routes of the Ultimates or just try doing like a retelling of one of the other classic stories involving a classic hero?
Probably like the retelling of the stories, similar to like what DC is doing right now.
Yeah, because DC has been doing a lot of some past stories they've done, and they've been so good. I mean, DC. I could just go on about an entire podcast about how great DC's animation is and how their animated films are. And when we were at New York Comic Con, Breon, you went to 3 panels, if I'm not mistaken, of DC animated stuff. You went to the Constantine one, you went to the Return of Superman panel, and the Batman animated series panel. So tell us, what was your experience going to an animated panel at New York Comic Con?
It was like the first one I've been to. It was really exciting to see like the fans of the series and how like passionate they were, and like with the voice actors, they like a lot of voice actors for like some like anime shows I watch, it's kind of just like their job. It's not like if you see them at like a convention or something, they're just like they just treat it more like a job than. But with like the Batman animated series one, it's like they're really like passionate about the series and like how like the work that they did on it and all, like the like memories they had with the cast that they worked with and everything. I thought that was really cool. I didn't expect it to be like that.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing when especially you get to panels, and especially like with DC's history. I know we're talking about Marvel's, but to say just how impactful animated films are to fans is just truly telling something. Because like Breon said, he's gone down there and just you sometimes will walk in and some people will just treat it like a job, and that's fine because it is a job. But when you see the fans that really, or the voice actors that really embrace it, like Kevin Conroy, who is arguably the best Batman out there.
He is Batman.
Yes. You could, people argue about, it's Christian Bale or it's Michael Keaton. It's like, no, for a lot of people, it's Kevin Conroy, and rightfully so. And to see just how much passion he is giving to the fans and just the interactions, you can just tell about how much those characters meant, and just, it wasn't necessarily just a job to them. And when you hear that, and especially how it connects to you as a fan, that's something that just, it sticks with you and just helps grow. And then you wonder why, still, how many years later are we talking about Batman the Animated Series and how much of an impact that's made. And for Marvel now to take a step in the right direction, because I guarantee you the next time they have an animated movie and they have a panel for this, it's going to be the same kind of vibe. Because for New York, I think it was kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. Because
if Marvel could really do it.
Right. Because they haven't been known for doing it. The MCU speaks for itself. If you said, okay, Marvel is doing a movie panel, you already know what's going to happen. And the level of expectation is that high, and they nail it out of the park every time. But to see him do an animated film and to do this well, and just overall from the presentation to the characters to the story, to really nail it and treat it not... Honestly, like the animation is almost like second, because for a lot of people, this is just a regular superhero movie, and rightfully so. It is that good. And just imagine the reaction that this is going to spark for more Marvel projects coming out. And like I said, Breon was mentioning earlier, talking about doing the X-Men movies, or translating the X-Men's to the animated style. Iron Man to an animated movie. I mean, me personally, I would love to see an old school Captain America film in animated style.
That would be cool.
I think that would be so cool. Give me the Winter Soldier in animated style. That's up. I'll be there first day, opening night, first seat. Guarantee you. But overall, what is your thoughts of Marvel moving forward? Are they taking enough steps in the right direction with this animated style with Spider-Man? Do you want to see more of this, Breon?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely would like the MCU's like probably going to be winding down in the next like couple years. They have to, something else for them to be to put in theaters with their animated movies. It definitely would be really cool to see those.
Yeah, I think overall, Into the Spider-Verse definitely set the bar very high for Marvel to hit now with their animation movies. And for them to make it a big theatrical release, I think is a step in the right direction. And it definitely shows that they're taking this very seriously. Not to say that they weren't, but to obviously go off the reputation of the MCU and to see now that it's translating to their animated movies. And granted, it's different studios, and I know the Spider-Man is not technically under the MCU, and you can get into the nitpicking about that. But overall, though, for Marvel to demonstrate that, we can do animated films just as well as DC, and we're just getting started, that's a true telling sign. And me personally, I can't wait to see what they got coming next. But let us know what you think. Hit us up on the hashtag ODPHEE. What's your thoughts on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Rob Kacharik from the band 607, Autopilot Off, and Walking Distance, and you're listening to ODPH.
Coming back for another segment on this week's ODPH Entertainment Edition with Breon from the Wrestling Recap Show on board. Now, Breon, we are not talking wrestling, but we are mentioning a movie that featured a wrestler in it. BumbleBee, the Transformers prequel, starring the one and only John Cena. Yes. Which I have to say, are you a big Transformers fan?
I like the first one. Not as much the second one, and I didn't see the ones after that, unfortunately.
Yeah, did you ever watch the cartoon growing up? Or seen him on like Cartoon Network or anywhere it's been on?
Yeah, I've seen some of it.
Yeah, like the original 1980s cartoon is just so classic. And it really definitely set the bar as far as, cartoons of that period, and just kind of seeing Transformers more than meets the eye and the whole nine with that. And just really, it's so much nostalgia from the 80s, I guess. Like me, I've seen it growing up. And for me, hearing about movies when the Transformer movies came out, I was not really that impressed. I got to admit. The first one I've seen, the second one, I've only seen bits and pieces. I haven't seen one since. So obviously when they started talking about BumbleBee, and I don't want to say they were rebooting the franchise, but it definitely caught my attention that they were going to do a standalone. I was really interested in this. Now, I'm going to kind of avoid spoilers again, too, for this one, because I know the movie's just come out, and I want to give people enough time to watch the movie. But overall, when you first heard about BumbleBee, what was your reaction, Breon?
I thought it was directed by Michael Bay. I didn't know that they had someone else doing it.
Yeah, Travis Knight took the directorial reins on this one.
Yeah, so I thought it was Michael Bay, and I'm like, I didn't really like the Transformers movies after the first one, so I wasn't really paying attention to it. But then I saw reviews of it online. I'm like, wow, this is did Michael Bay actually do a good Transformers movie, I guess? And then I found it's a different director. It's like, oh, okay, but it actually looks really good.
Yeah, it definitely had a different style to it. And one thing that it really kind of caught my attention is it is as much of a throwback movie to the 80s as you're going to see in recent memory. I think the only thing maybe closer to a real throwback is Stranger Things on Netflix. Like, that is just so classic and just the time period it's in. This movie, they said in the 1980s, and you're finding out the origin of why the Transformers came to Earth. And it was really kind of interesting to see, because I didn't think there was honestly that much backstory to it.
Yeah, me either.
And when they introduce how BumbleBee winds up on Earth, and you actually find out something very interesting, and I won't spoil this, you find out why he doesn't speak. And he kind of speaks in radio song. They actually explain it, which I thought was very interesting, because I never would have thought they would have gone that route. But the one thing that I thought was interesting is, as you're going through, and like I said, everything about the movie is just 1980s. The music in it is definitely the 1980s, and there is one point, if you have seen the animated Transformers movie, it had the song The Touch in it, which if you've seen the movie, you know it's the Stan Bush song, and it definitely, it's just like, when I heard that, I was like, oh wow, they really are going back to really tie in everything from the nostalgia standpoint of the 1980s. And it definitely was interesting to see how they were pulling this off, because like the easiest way I can describe this, it was almost, they weren't reinventing the wheel with this. This was definitely like, you know, E.T., almost just involving robots. It was just, you have an alien, as you can kind of perceive it, just a robot coming to the right person at the right time. You know, Haley Steinfeld's character, Charlie, was definitely, you know, in need of a change of direction, and just Bumblebee happened to wind up connecting with her. And you kind of see the escapades that go on, and then you see John Cena as the, you know, determined military soldier sergeant. I forget exactly what his rank is.
He finally turned heel.
Yes, he finally turned heel, and he was just so hamming it up too. I mean, he wasn't overboard. It wasn't like he was, you know, overselling, if I want to use a wrestling term. But he was definitely just like embracing the role for all it was. And like I say, the movie is not going to reinvent the wheel by any means. It's definitely one, it's a throwback. But as far as the Transformer movie goes, like this had to be one of their better ones. Like their script made sense. Like what Breon was kind of touching upon earlier. The previous ones have just been, you know, your typical action, you know, action first, script later. At least in our opinion. I think that's an honest statement.
Yeah, definitely. Like the plots are like really confusing.
Yeah, and I don't think they really kind of establish a lot in the previous movies. You know, like I say, and everybody's got a different opinion about them. Me personally, like I say, it's just a lot of action going on, and just kind of really confusing stories of like, all right, why are we here, you know, in this different part of the world and trying to do different stuff here, and, you know, we're
explosions.
doing, yeah, just random explosions and all that kind of
bad
fun
editing.
Stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on with those movies, and it is what it is. Like, you know, they're big summer blockbusters, so, you know, a lot of times you just want to be really entertained instead of going and seeing like an epic. But like for us, that we read comics a lot, and we're used to really detailed stories and just, you know, intricate plots and such. Bumblebee not necessarily was that film, but it had a lot of heart. It was such a throwback that if you've seen, you know, if you like I say, if you like Stranger Things, I think you'll like this because it's a lot of it's in the same vein. It was a lot of going on, you know, the connection of just, you know, like a coming of age story, so to speak, and just seeing how, you know, as we talked about in the previous segments with Aquaman, you know, how you become a reluctant hero when you're forced in this situation. And for Bumblebee, definitely did that. It had a lot of throwbacks to original Transformers. I saw Shockwave on the screen, and I was marking out. I'm not gonna lie. You know, he is one of the he's probably the best Decepticon. You can argue with me on social media all you want about this. Hashtag ODPHEE. He is better than Megatron. I will stand by that statement. I know I'm kind of geeking out. I apologize for that. But overall, though, this was, I think, a step in the right direction with it. And, you know, I guess I would say if you wanted to see, let me throw this to Breon. I'm going to kind of throw a curveball with this. If you could name another wrestler that you want to see in a movie franchise, who would you want to see and what franchise?
Probably like, I don't know, Becky Lynch in a Birds of Prey movie, or like Charlotte as She-Hulk. That'd be cool.
That would be really cool to kind of see Charlotte as She-Hulk, and I could definitely see Becky Lynch as Birds of Prey. That would be something, because I know the movie is getting worked on as we're recording. And that one, I mean, the casting they've been doing for that's been phenomenal too. Like, I'm super excited to see when that comes out. And, you know, that's a good question, because, I mean, The Rock has made that transition into superstardom from starting in pro wrestling. John Cena looks to be stepping in that direction. You know, who would be next to come out of there? I don't know. I mean, you could argue Seth Rollins. You could argue Roman Reigns. I could definitely see them making the jump to the big screen, so to speak.
Or Triple H. He's been in he was in like one of the Blade movies, right?
Yeah, I believe Blade 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so he could probably step back and do like a superhero movie.
Yeah, and for John Cena, I don't necessarily know if he'll be back around for any more Transformer movies. It would be kind of interesting just because with the time jump going on with it. That would be something if they actually brought him back. I don't know.
Older.
I don't know how they would. I mean, that'd be something kind of wild too. Like all of a sudden, like 30 years later, John Cena is back, and he's still hunting Autobots.
Yeah, just have him be in it as he looks right now. He looks like really old.
Yeah, especially with how his hair's styled. That throws me off every time because I'm so used to seeing him as the Doctor of Thugonomics.
Yeah, same.
You know, taking it back to the throwback. But overall, getting back to Bumblebee, it's an entertaining film. It's definitely, I would say, out of the three that we've mentioned thus far, it's probably the one that's on the bottom of the list, but it's not to say it's a bad movie, though. It's a nice throwback. If you're looking for something very entertaining, I would check it out. It'll surprise you because it definitely has a different feel than the previous Transformer films. And going in with that, if they're going to reboot the franchise, if they're going to try doing something along the same lines of Bumblebee, I'm all for it because it kind of captured the essence of the 1980s nostalgia, which if you've grown up watching the cartoon, you'll definitely want to check out. But let us know what you think. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPHE. What was your thoughts on Bumblebee? If you've seen it, if you haven't, are you going to see it? Are you not? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Johnny Moose from Excite Wrestling, and you're listening to the ODPH. I didn't mess it up. I thought I would. Right now, back to the guys.
Coming back for the final segment on this week's ODPH Entertainment Edition, the last one for 2018. So instead of our typical one-shots, we have Breon from the Wrestling Recap Show in studio. We're going to kind of go through what we're looking forward to most from movies, TV, comics, whatever in 2019. So I think I'll start us off. Movie-wise, I don't think there's anything bigger that I'm waiting to see than Avengers Endgame. I think, honestly, we've seen the trailer. It's going to be, dare I say, the bookend to the beginning of the MCU, where they're going to go from here. I know you've seen the trailer. What's your thoughts on the trailer for Endgame thus far you've seen?
I'm really looking forward to it. It's like how like it's all came together, like the MCU that they've started years ago, and like how it's gonna come to an end, and who's gonna, like, if people are gonna like they're gonna have characters die or anything like that, or how they're gonna bring back the characters that Thanos killed, and like what role Captain Marvel is gonna play in it. Like a lot of that stuff I'm really looking forward to get answers about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing Marvel has done such a nice job about, teasing fans about what's going to happen. And obviously, if you've read the Infinity Gauntlet, you have an idea how the story's going to wrap up. But Marvel has not exactly said it's going to play out that way. The only thing I think we know for certain is Spider-Man is coming back. Because Far From Home is not a prequel. I want to stress that. The sequel to Homecoming is not going to be a prequel. There has been some online chatter saying that the whole Spider-Man Homecoming is supposed to be some prequel. No, it's not. They're going to kick off with Captain Marvel. That's the only thing we know is going to be set in the 90s. So we're going to kind of find out where Captain Marvel's been this entire time in the beginning of the MCU. Once we get to Avengers, everything else is going to change after that. The only things we really know for certain is Spider-Man Far From Home is coming out. There's another Marvel movie that I know is on top of Breon's list of movies to watch this year, and that is X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I was at a panel with Sophie Turner at Comic-Con. I'm really interested in like how they're going to change it from the X-Men 3. Like if it's going to be, like, it looks a lot better than that one, but...
Oh yeah, it looks 20 times better than that.
Yeah, and like Sophie Turner's role in it, if she's really going to be like a good Jean Grey, because I know like some people were criticizing how she was in Apocalypse. So I think from the trailer, she looks like she really nailed it as Jean Grey.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they're going to do it, because obviously this one is filmed before the whole MCU acquiring Fox deal, which is still slated to be finalized in January of 2019, and that's when Marvel gets the Fantastic Four back, they get the X-Men back, and everything is going to change. And the one thing that we can definitely say for certain is you probably will not see any of those said characters in Avengers Endgame. You might see a cameo per se, maybe a name drop, but you're not going to see anybody involved in like a post-credit scene. But getting back to Avengers Dark Phoenix, or of X-Men Dark Phoenix, I almost said Avengers Dark Phoenix. That would be a heck of a movie.
Oh yeah.
X-Men Dark Phoenix has a lot to live up to. Now, is it going to be the epic that we're hoping for? I hope so. I'm trying to go in. I mean, it definitely has a unique tone to it. I will say that, and it definitely looked maybe closer to the comics than X3: The Last Stand did, because that one just had a very unique vibe to it. Dare I say, I mean, I was let down by it personally. I was not a big fan of that movie, X3.
Yeah, me neither. Like how they just killed off like main characters. I mean, Cyclops just dies at the beginning of the movie. Like, it's like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, because especially how much he plays a role in the story of Dark Phoenix is crazy. And then, kind of how they force, Wolverine into that role, and just where it ends up is just kind of, it's very messy, to say the least. So I'm just hoping with this one, though, they clean it up a bit, and it'll be the proper send-off to what we know. I guess, do we call it X-Men Phase 1? Because now as they transition to Marvel, everything is going to change. Will Sophie Turner be playing Jean Grey as we're stepping in the 2019-2020 range? Hard to say. I'd like to see her stay in the role. I don't know if Marvel is going to do that. Usually, when they do a recast, it'll be everybody top to bottom. The only thing I'm really hoping is Hugh Jackman stays on as Wolverine for at least one Avengers movie. Please.
Yeah, I think he said that he would say Wolverine if he could be in the Avengers.
Yeah, and I think that that's a no-brainer for me. Like, he needs to play Wolverine.
He is Wolverine.
Yeah. And, I mean, I don't know who they would get us as a successor to him. I know eventually it's going to happen, but I don't know. No, there's nobody really jumping right now at me that's going, you know what, I could see him taking over the role. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But movie-wise, there's so much coming out, too. Captain Marvel is coming out. Shazam is coming out by DC. Far From Home, as we've already mentioned. Star Wars Episode 9, which is a very polarizing topic amongst the panel.
Not really looking forward to that one.
Hey, he's honest, folks. Breon is not a fan of the current Star Wars run. I know if Padawan J is here, that'll be a lengthy debate that we will save for another podcast in 2019. But overall, though, there's so many good movies coming out. At least they look the role. Even Godzilla, as we've been talking about, the King of the Monsters trailer that dropped at Aquaman and over the week. I tell you what, everything is just looking like there's so much promise for 2019. I'm super excited as a movie fan to go see what they got coming. For TV-wise, Breon, what is jumping out at you for 2019?
Mainly just Game of Thrones. I still got to get caught up with the series, but definitely looking forward to the finale for that.
Yeah, HBO's Epic is, I have an idea how it's going to end. I don't know. I don't want to spoil it by any means. I don't know. I don't really read the books. I've watched every episode thus far. Love the show. I mean, it took me a while to get on board, but by midway season 1, I was hooked. I have an idea, I think, of how it's going to end. I'm just going to save it for when we do our Game of Thrones preview show in 2019. But I'm excited to see that. And, as far as other shows are going on, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is coming back. And now it's not going to be the last season, which is kind of mind-boggling to me on a whole bunch of different levels. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I mean, was such a pleasant surprise. Have you watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I've seen some of it.
Have you watched since season 4?
No, I have not.
You need to jump on board. I honestly just jump in cold because season 4 is so epic. From episode 1 to the finale. Season 5 is good too. It's gotten better every season since season 1. Captain America 2 episode. If you really want to spend the time and hammer through it, go right ahead. But for me, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming back, and now that they got greenlit for a 7th season already, is going to be wild. I'm super excited to see that. On the DC Universe tip, I can't wait until Doom Patrol drops on February 15th. Now, are you familiar with anything going on in the DC Universe? Or no? The app, that is.
Oh, no.
Okay. They've been doing their live action shows, and they kicked off with Titans, which was a lot better than the first trailer looked. I will say that. They just had their season finale, albeit kind of a letdown, but one heck of a cliffhanger Easter egg to start season 2 with. I'm going to get into that next episode. But Doom Patrol is going to spin out of Titans. I can't wait for it. It's basically a really quirkier version of the X-Men. And they did their introductions on Titans, and it was phenomenal. I can't wait to see what they got coming with that. The DC Universe has got a lot more shows coming out, too. Swamp Thing, I think, is going to be coming out next year, too. I can't wait to see how that plays out. My only hope is that they finally get it on Xbox and PlayStation, the app, so you can watch it on via that. But we'll have to wait and see. I think they're working on more platforms for it. And just overall, I can't wait for Crisis on Infinite Earths to come out too for the Arrowverse. And we talked about that last episode, how Elseworlds was the prequel for it. Something big is going to happen to the DC CW universe. I can't wait to see what happens. Going into comics, is there anything really jumping out at you for 2019?
I still got to get caught up with the Wonder Woman Rebirth ones, but other than that, not at the moment.
No, that's all right. There's a lot of books that are coming out that we kind of have some, eyes on here at the ODPH panel. Definitely Heroes in Crisis. The finale is going to be coming out next year. I can't wait to see how that ends. That is arguably one of the hardest hitting books out there, dealing with how the DC universe is kind of dealing with like real world trauma reactions to being everyday superheroes, and obviously dealing with whoever was responsible for the murders at Sanctuary. That's going to be just like, I can't wait to see how that ends up. Plus, next year is another DC book that I'm looking forward to, and that's the End of Doomsday Clock, the DC Universe Watchmen crossover. That's going to be huge. I don't know how it's going to spin out. I have no idea how they're going to end it, at least if I'm doing my math right. Barring any delays on the book, I believe it's going to be ended next year. That's going to be crazy. And obviously, the steps that Marvel has been doing in the right direction too, since they've been doing their revamps. Amazing Spider-Man has been on point. Their Venom book has been great. I'm expecting to see more, coming out of the Avengers too. Obviously, as we're getting closer to the Avengers Endgame release date, there's going to be so much going on that, obviously trying to predict what's going to be happening for the comics in 2019 is going to be tough, but definitely going to be excited to watch, and especially with the DC Black Label coming out too. Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder have one more Batman story that I believe is coming out next year, The Last Night on Earth, which I cannot wait to pick up. I think if you know me, I am a huge Snyder and Capullo fan. I cannot wait to see what they got cooked up. Dark Knight's Metal, enough said. Their whole run on Batman, enough said. I can't wait to see what's coming out. There's a lot of great things happening in 2019, so stay tuned to the ODPH. That's all we got for this week. So for my co-host, Breon, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Breon will be back on the ODPH for the wrestling recap when we start that back up in January, hopefully. We got a lot of big announcements coming with that. Our good friend George Gatton will be coming back on the ODPH at Wrestling Recap to talk some news that he wants to share with everybody. It's kind of some big news happening around WrestleMania weekend. So stay tuned for that. Johnny Moose will be back on the show as well, too. So that actually might be a two-parter episode. That's how big the WrestleMania edition is going to be of the ODPH. Breon is definitely going to have a lot of takes for that one, too, because WrestleMania time, how big is that for a wrestling fan?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be big.
Yes, so stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the return of the Spotlight Edition. Our good friend Jimmy Gazdick from Crimson Brethren and Floodlands is going to be co-hosting that with me. We're going to be talking to a couple local bands in the area. The first one, it's been long overdue, but we're going to make it happen, is Shout at the Robots. They will be on the ODPH Spotlight Edition beginning of the new year, 2019. Stay tuned for that. And Floodlands is finally done with their album. They will be on the ODPH Spotlight Edition early 2019 as well. So there's a lot of big things happening. We want to give a shout out to our friends over at 8122 Productions. They got their website kicking in, 3 Fat Nerds and Horror Zone 607. They're doing big things in 2019. The ODPH is doing big things in 2019. Stay tuned, and as always, we can't thank you enough for your support. We're Binghamton's fastest growing podcast for a reason, and we don't do it without you. So we want to say thank you as always for listening to the ODPH. We'll see you next time.